So everybody, we got Rick Fox on the phone.
Legendary.
That's right. This guy is the man. He's been through, like I was saying before, this guy's jammed with everybody cool.
And then some.
Thank you.
So it is a real treat for us, and we do thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
You know, I just wanted to jump into this thing because I was reading this story here about the Rockers Against Trafficking benefit concert that you were a part of. What a cool thing that this is all around. That people get together and do this for this really awesome sort of benefit to hook these families up and against human trafficking. It really is a problem, and it's cool that people are getting together and recognizing and doing something about it. So our hats off.
Absolutely. It just started out as my dear old friend Kevin Estrada, who's like a famed celebrity and rock and roll photographer. Last year I played at his birthday jam at Palladino's, and then this year he contacted me again. He said, "Would you play at my party, my birthday party?" I said, "Sure, not a problem. For you, anything, Right. And then a couple of weeks later, he goes, "You know what? It's not my birthday thing anymore. It's evolved into something much bigger, and here's what it is." And he told me about the Rockers Against Trafficking thing, and he says it's a benefit now. And he says, "You're still interested, right?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm all about benefits. I'm on board, no matter what. Right from the get go, team player and all that. I kept low on it, like he asked, and until he got it all set and everything in place, and then." He said, "Look at all these people we got involved," and he put up the advertising. And I was like, "Holy crap! Look at this! This is going to be the event of the year." And sure enough, that's what it felt like being there. And with all the massive talent that was in that room, it was like, "Holy cow! How can you not do something great for Rockers Against Trafficking?"
Yep. My only regret is I didn't know sooner because I myself would have showed up to this.
It was just. Well, it was an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be involved in that, and I'm glad that we all helped raise like some $10,000 or so. So I mean,
that's excellent.
It's a drop in the bucket, but and the battle is won, but the war isn't over, and we need to fight on. We need to raise awareness on these things, and
right, and that's how it starts.
It's all about using our talent to give back.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. Yep, and it starts that way, and next year, the word's gonna spread. People are gonna be more on board.
I'm telling you, it's gonna be massive next year.
And you guys, was this at Palladino's this last time?
Yeah. It's interesting how that happened because, like I said, I played with Kevin. We did a couple of songs. We did a Steelers song and we did a Motorhead song, like last year. And then I've also been doing some rehearsals with Spiders and Snakes.
Right.
They have a new album coming out called Year of the Snake on Sensei Records, and they had asked me if I wanted to come down and record a song on the album, and I said sure, and they did a remake of Angel's, actually from the Rascals, but Angel did a remake of Ain't Gonna Eat Out My Heart Anymore. So they did it on their album, and I came in and I did the tracks for that, and then a little while after that, the drummer, Tim Yasui, calls me up and he goes, "Hey, we're on board for this Rockers Against Trafficking gig. You want to do it with us?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Of course." So, their bass player is out right now. Phil's out temporarily. He's on a hiatus. So I'm just, stepping in and filling in for him while he's out, taking care of business. And Spiders and Snakes went on, I think, second. And we did a 5-song set. Betsy from Bitch came up and did a duet with Lizzie.
Oh, right on.
And we did, they did Ballroom Blitz by The Sweet, and we did Be My Lover by Alice Cooper, and then the rest were Spiders and Snakes songs. So I did like a 5-song set with Spiders and Snakes, took a break, other bands played, and then I got up with Kevin, and we played 2 more songs. So that was just awesome all the way around.
That's cool. You got a good solid jam in.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it was looks like from a lot of the feedback, you had good crowd response. The people were really into it, and especially when it came to the part where they were talking about these girls, Ollie and Savannah, and how everybody was showing their respect and stuff. So, that's really cool to get that kind of participation in the show. Huh?
It is really. When you usually like between songs, like Kevin will do like a raffle with some rock and roll, paraphernalia and memorabilia, or we'll do a silent auction. But it's nice, when actual people who are involved firsthand in this and have experienced it with their kids get up there and talk and still maintain the audience's attention.
Yep.
It's great that the audience stands there and listens and absorbs it and not just there for the music.
Yep, it's a great way to spread the word, man. I couldn't agree more. It sounds like you guys are doing a really good thing.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was glad to be part of it. Even though we went on second, Spiders and Snakes, people usually there's not that many people that early in the evening, but I turned around, man, and the house was filling up, and already at the second slot in, we rocked the place. That I was really surprised, and it just filled from there. Ann Boleyn from Hellion, she turned out a great set. Helmet rocked the place. They were like the last band on. They friggin' rocked.
Yeah, that's what this article was saying, that they had a really good set.
They're tight like a machine.
That's the way their music's always been, though. It's been real precise, real.
And they did stuff from the album In the Meantime, which really just brought the house down. So that was
nice.
Cool. And it was a lot of super group people there. Dave Lombardo from Slayer and
I saw that.
The bass player. I don't remember everybody's names. I was meeting people for the first time. Guitar player from I think Megadeth.
Mustaine or
bass player from Stone Temple Pilots.
DeLeo.
Keith St. John from Montrose.
Nice.
Yeah.
Holy cow! There was just somebody. The opening band was called Two Humans, and they were a three-piece band. They took me back to 1975 in the New York City rock scene, like Max's Kansas City and CBGB's. This band would have been great back then, and I told them, I said, you guys would fit right in with that whole scene. They're a really good band.
Brought you right back to your photographing days, huh?
Yeah. When I started out, in New York City.
For sure. You guys totally had an all-star lineup. I'm looking at it right now. It was a good gig. I'm sorry, Stack. Did you want to ask some questions? I'm all hogging it up.
No, it's just I'm enjoying the hell out of this conversation.
I know you had some stuff pulled up. That's cool.
I had a couple things pulled up. Just pretty much about the whole Kiss book that's coming up.
Oh, that's already out. Yeah. Nothing to Lose. It's the early story of early Kiss.
Yeah. It's called Nothing to Lose: The Making of Kiss, 1972 to 75. Yep.
I was there when it was all happening. When it was, even before Ace Frehley was in the band, we used to watch them rehearse. It was just Peter, Gene, and Paul, three-piece.
Wow.
Now that is awesome. I was actually watching your interview from the you were at the 2014
NAMM show.
Oh, the NAMM show.
Yeah. There you go. When you were doing the interview.
Yeah.
And that was a good interview. Yeah.
Madcap Music. Yeah. They John and Cynthia. That was great. Yeah.
Nice.
They called me on my New York history when I started out. So we took it from there, from Max's and CBGB's and from Kiss, and watching Kiss rehearse, and then Ace showed up, and the next thing you know, they're four-piece, and then I was going to the Diplomat and the Coventry shows and
Coventry.
Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And then of course the Phil Maurice show. That it wasn't called the Phil Maurice; it was closed then. But Alice Cooper was using it to rehearse one of his shows in, and
awesome.
And then, Kiss did their press premiere there for Casablanca Records. So, my famous pictures made it into the book, and some pictures from the Coventry made it into the book. So, I thank Ken Sharp for that. He's the only Kiss author who actually took the time to look me up and interview me for the book. Out of all of the other Kiss books and Kiss authors that are out there,
and there's a lot.
I tip my hat to Ken.
That is cool. It's good to have the facts straight, especially when you're writing a book.
And you were there from their inception, pretty much, right up till kaboom.
Speaking of inception, one of my parts of that interview that stuck out with me was when you were describing how you guys came up with the name for W.A.S.P. Could you share that with us?
Sure. I had come out from New York. Blackie had me come out and audition for the band, and I passed the audition, obviously.
Of course.
And I was living at his house. He had this tiny little cottage in Hollywood off of Las Palmas and Fountain. And I think some of the guys from Legs Diamond lived across the street. But I was staying at his house, and of course, they didn't have cell phones then, and he had a really long extension on his phone, and a friend of mine called from New York So I took the phone out into the courtyard, and I'm walking around, and it was a huge avocado tree, and I'm just walking around aimlessly kicking over these leaves. And I'm on the phone, and I kicked over a leaf, and there was this hornet on the ground, and I stepped on it real quick, and because I didn't, I guess I surprised it. I didn't want it to attack me or if I'd angered it.
I'd have done the same thing.
Yeah, I stepped on it, and it was kind of, I didn't squash it flat completely. It was still kind of like it was dying, and the stinger was moving. And the way it was curled up, it reminded me of the old logo from the Green Hornet TV show in the 60s. They used to run opposite the Batman. And I went back in the house, and I said, "Hey, Blackie," and he's watching the Yankees ball game. He's like, totally bored. And I said, "I got an idea for a band name," because he had told me, "I want to get rid of Sister." He goes, "We've used it, and we've used it out. There's too many. There's Twisted Sister. There's White Sister. There's too many bands using Sister." He goes, "I need something new."
Right.
So oddly enough, I said, "I got an idea for a band name," and he says, "What?" And I said, "W.A.S.P." And he just like looks past me off into the ceiling, like he's thinking, and he goes, "Yeah, that's a good idea." He goes, "Keep thinking like that. It's a great. Okay, that's cool." And he went back to watching the ball game. So it was either that night or the next night. We went to rehearsal, and after rehearsal, he says to Randy and Tony, "Hey, we got a new name for a band. New idea." And Randy goes, "Well, I wanted to call the band Hellion, because he says that's what they call bad kids in Texas, little hellions."
Right.
And Blackie goes, no, we got a name. And he goes, "What is it?" And he says, "W.A.S.P." And right away, without batting an eyelash, Tony Richards, he goes, "Who names a band after a bug?" And it got quiet for a second, and I said, "The Beatles?" and Randy and Blackie started laughing, and I said, "Scorpions?"
Right.
And he's like, yeah, okay, I guess so. And that was it. That was how the name was born. And if I wasn't in that band at that time, and I wasn't in that right place at that right time, the question would be remaining today. What would that band have been called if I wasn't there and I didn't come up with that name?
Right, because there's a long history associated with it.
Yeah. So, I stepped in, and I did what I was supposed to do, and then he cans me from the band, for personal reasons, And then I'm out, And then he says, "You're not to own any proof that you were ever in this band. No photos, no nothing." And I said, "Screw that." And I went out and I got some. Don Atkins took our pictures. He did band photos. Now, if there was never, like Blackie said, wasn't a W.A.S.P for Rick Fox to be in. Well, if that's true, then why go to the trouble of taking band photos? Why record a demo?
Right.
And I'm on the original demo, and I'm in the photos. And when he found out I had some of the pictures, he got furious. He made me give some of them back, but I kept a couple, and luckily, all these years later, these decades later, it's come back to bite him in the ass, Now he's got to try and explain why I'm in the pictures and why I'm on the demo. And he won't do it.
That's an awkward position.
That's why he can't, because, then that would undermine everything he's ever said from the beginning, And I'm not mad about it, but, it's just ridiculous. And how can you fly in the face of logic, in the face of, documented evidence? How can you stay there and say that does not exist? It never did.
Well, there's a
That's
lot
an
of
ego thing a lot of the time.
There's a lot of disputed facts about this gentleman that we're talking to here, Stephen Steele, that have been completely just refuted. They're like, "Oh no, he didn't do that," and many people have come and been like, "Oh yeah, check this out. Yeah, he did that. That's him." There's been at least 3 or 4 that I read off of your Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And Lord knows how many you got flying around there just for the hell of it,
Yeah. And then there's this clown who was the guy who passed my name on to Blackie to get the ball rolling. He follows me around on the internet and on Facebook, and he drops, F-bombs and all kinds of really, really bad crap he says about me, really derogatory stuff. Like Rick Fox is not a bass player, he's a bass owner. He sucks. He can't play. He was never in W.A.S.P. He wasn't in. His bass tracks got recorded over in the out. I mean, he just does. This guy goes out of his way.
You know what? It's almost flattering.
Down everything I've ever done.
If he's going to go through the trouble to go through the effort, try to blast you like that, well, then he's saying, that's almost he's recognizing that he has to go to this level to try to shoot you down, to try to get other people on board with it.
You've reached a level in the game that is just unattainable by most people.
Well, he never went anywhere with his own band. I guess he's a failed musician, and the only way he can get attention attracted to himself is to get on a soapbox and call me out and say Rick Fox is a liar and everything he's ever. The guy, I mean, whenever I do an interview and it's posted online, he posts anonymously under like a name, anonymous with no picture, and he says everything in his interview is a lie. It's all lie, and then he harasses the host, whoever I did the interview with, and they go, "Who is this guy?" And I said, "Don't pay any attention to him. He does this on every interview I do."
He literally tries to troll you everywhere you go. I mean, that does have to seem flattering.
He goes through the
Well,
effort.
he takes enough time out of his day to think about me, so I guess it is.
Yeah, you are occupying a piece of that man's brain, whether he admits it or not.
Yeah.
You have your own little segregated corner that he thinks about probably on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, hey, what is a good way for people to learn more about you? Check out you have a Facebook page and.
I have 3 Facebook pages.
All
I
right.
have my main Rick Fox Facebook page, and then I have a fan page, which is I think it's under a secret or private status because, with the amount of people that try to infiltrate these your groups, and then they post spam and they try to hack and So
Right.
we screen people. So I do have a Rick Fox fan page. They can always contact me on my regular page and ask me, what the other page is. And then I have a third page that a friend of mine from Wikipedia created for me, and I have that. So there's 3 Rick Fox pages.
And keeps the
And I
trolling
have
on
my
that
website.
one.
Pull that up.
Yeah, actually, I check out some of your stories on your Facebook, and you point out a lot of the news that isn't necessarily popular media news.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a book, with all of these stories. I'm just compiling all of my stories, and sometimes being on Facebook will trigger a memory that I forgot about. Especially
Sure.
like when I'm in the New York Rocks group with Ray Steimel and all my old peeps from New York and the Max's crowd, and we'll talk about it, and it'll trigger something. I'll go, okay, and I start to tell that story, and then I got to copy and save it, and it goes in my book. So it's kind of cool. Facebook helps me in my personal research.
For sure, and sometimes it's interesting to see people's comments.
Yeah. And being from New York, I have that kind of, what do you call it? It's like a signature New York attitude, I guess. And sarcasm is one of it. It's being a wise guy, being dry wit and funny, but a lot of that does not translate in written form in Facebook, and a lot of people sometimes they don't get it.
Right, it's hard to put emphasis on something.
You end up pissing a lot of people off via text.
Yeah, because they don't get it. Trying to be funny, and if you can't hear it,
I put
you're just
ha-ha.
reading it, people put their own spin and their own interpretation on what you're writing, and it's like they don't even ask you for clarification. See, what did you mean by that? They just assume,
Right.
and that's what leads to a lot of conflict in Facebook. But
Drama in Facebook? I've never heard of such a thing.
yeah, my website is rickfoxbase.wix. That's wix.com /Rick Fox, and you got to spell it RIKFOX. That's another thing. Ace Frehley used to say his name is the most misspelled name in rock. I got him beat. My name is the most misspelled name in rock.
Yeah.
And that, I actually had a difficult time initially when we were first making contact with each other. I was like, I spelled your name R-I-C-K. I'm like, I don't see anybody that fits this description under this name.
Yep.
Well, you touched on little pieces of history in the past in the music, but you are actually a living history Renaissance reenactment pioneer, my friend.
Yeah, that's what led to the title I use now, the Winged Knight of Heavy Metal.
That's damn good right there.
That's part of my Polish ancestry, and it goes back to, old time, ancient not ancient, but like 14th, 15th century Poland, and our clan coat of arms is a very famous one, and it's attached to a very famous knight of Poland. His name is Zawisza Czarny, which means Zawisza the Black. He had black armor, and he had long black hair and a black beard, and
he was the most metal knight of all.
Yeah, my dad hipped me to all of that when I was younger, and then when I got involved in doing Renaissance fairs, he educated me as to what was going on with Poland at the time, And he said, "Don't you remember when you were a kid?" He goes, "I built that model of the Winged Knight." And I went, "Oh yeah, that's right." He took a Lone Ranger model and he reconverted it based off a picture in a book into a hussar with the wings on his back. And I said, of all the Polish military history, that's just the most dynamic and outrageous to represent and heroic would be the Winged Hussars, and that's what I picked. And so I was the first guy in the country to introduce that to living history and Renaissance events. And then, military timelines, which we get more respect at, actually, than Ren fairs. But,
Right.
I picked a part of history that's very difficult to portray, but it's very rewarding at the same time. So, I promote and raise Polish historic awareness through the portrayals of the Winged Hussars. We have a camp, and, I have my armor and everything. You've seen pictures in
Right.
Facebook and whatnot. And as I was taking a break from that, and I'm coming back into my music, I'm everybody's got, I don't want to say a gimmick. That's kind of a cheap description, but everybody has some kind of theme, something to underscore what they're doing. And I went, wait a minute, Winged Knight. They were the rock stars of Poland in the 17th century. So, it doesn't get any better than that. So I started working on some ideas, and my graphics friend Steve Talbot on Team Fox helped me put together something, and now that's my new motif, is the Winged Knight of heavy metal.
And that's awesome.
Which is metal as hell right there, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are credited as the honorary title of the first saber of the U.S.
Yeah. That when we went to Poland in 2010, was it 2000? Yeah, 2010. There was a huge battle reenactment there. It was the 400th anniversary of the Battle of Klushin, where the Poles were outnumbered like 16-1, and they beat the Russians. And I was surprised at how many people over there already knew me. They knew me from music. They knew me from what I was doing in America with the Hussars. They were very proud that I was representing over in America, and I got interviewed by several different people. And a friend of mine, who was at that time working at the Polish embassy in Kiev, he's also a reenactor, interviewed me for a story, and he was the one that dubbed me with that title, the first saber of the U.S. So I was very proud to have that title. I'm just glad I was able to do what I do and bring that attention, that awareness up to people.
For sure.
And at first, rockers don't understand that part of history. They don't understand a lot of history. They're really interested in history. Who am I fooling?
Implement it in the music.
Except for Iron Maiden.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Some guys are hip to it, and they bring it out through their music, and that's how they have to introduce it to people on a level that they can really identify with.
Sure.
And at first, like I said, the rockers didn't understand where I was coming from. They see a guy in armor with wings on his back, and they go, "What are you supposed to be?" I've been accused of being, what are you, like some Dungeons and Dragons fantasy character playing battles on the weekend? By people who don't understand. But little by little, they started to see what I've done, and they go, "Oh, now I get it." Hey, you know what? That's pretty cool, actually. And then some of the living history people cross over, and they see me doing the music thing and bringing the living history aspect through that. So I'm actually cross promoting both music and living history in representing the Hussars, and everybody's starting to get on it now. They're like, "Well, that's cool. Now I get what you're doing." So it's cool all the way around, actually. So I'm really glad about that.
Well, right on, man. Before we part ways here, can we get you to do a station bump?
Sure. I also have a show to promote.
Okay, definitely.
I've been asked to step in again with Spiders and Snakes on Saturday, May 24th.
All right.
There's a club in Hollywood called Loaded on Hollywood Boulevard. It's loadedhollywood.com. And I'll be doing a show there with Spiders and Snakes. And guess who we're supporting?
Who's that?
You'll never guess.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Then it's one of them, huh? Lit?
Nope.
Okay.
Of all the bands in the world that is coming back out here to LA, I don't know how many shows they're doing, but we're supporting Thor.
Thor?
Yeah, you remember Thor, the guy from Canada?
Yeah.
The big muscle guy with the blow up hot water ball, Ben Steel in his teeth.
Huh? No, actually,
maybe I'm thinking of a different person.
Google Thor, the band, and it's John Michael. He's the singer. That's Thor, and he had a sort of a hard rock heavy metal band, and with all the imagery and everything. And he's like a strong man, and he's
That's
coming
cool.
out to L.A. That he's playing. He's headlining at Loaded, and I'm playing with Spiders and Snakes, and we're supporting him at that show on May 24th.
That's
May
awesome.
24th.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to help promote that show coming up, and we'd be glad to have you on the show again. And anytime, maybe we could talk about some other stories, because you do post a lot of interesting stories. And so I see you have some political minded, comments up there. So, and it would be kind of interesting to talk about that sort of stuff for the listeners from a rock and roll heavy metal perspective.
Yeah,
So-
I just put it out there, and I go, hey, this is interesting, or this is interesting, and
Yeah,
sometimes I don't really take a side on it, but I just
you get people
I
thinking.
use my Facebook page sometimes like a talk show host. And I'll look at some news items, I'll post them, I'll get something provocative or interesting to talk about. And what I do is I get people to start, putting their comments in. So it's like I'm empowering other people to voice their opinions about what they think about whatever it is that I posted. As long as there's no name calling, then it's cool, and it gets it just gets people talking and thinking.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. That's one of the reasons why we do the show, because we like to get people talking and thinking and listening to,
And Steve likes to call me names.
and I like to call a stack of names sometimes because it's funny.
And how did you guys ever come up with kosher metal? That's great. It's such an original idea.
Actually, that's the station's creator, Manjuki,
Yeah.
Yep, he came up
Max.
with that.
the
Yep.
Jukes Box,
He started doing the show a while back, I think
with another individual, actually.
with someone else back in 2011, and then later on in 2011, I started doing a show with him, and we started doing this show, and 3 years later, 2 years later, however long it's been.
Well, we just celebrated our 3rd year as a 24/7 online radio.
Yep, and we support a lot of local.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we
Thank
support
you.
a lot of local bands. We have people come over, and we just did our first acoustic jam over here at the studio and
Last week.
Yeah, so we like to have people come by. It's always a good time. You're always welcome to come by. It'd be great. So
Thanks. It's interesting too that the relationship between Poland or Polish and Jewish people. Historically speaking, Poland was the first country, the first nation in Europe to open their doors to all other religions that were trying to escape persecution in Europe, back in the day, the Spanish Inquisition and all that. And they opened their doors to Jews, Muslims, anybody could come into Poland and worship without, fear of reprisal. So subsequently, a lot of cultural foods and things got intermixed with each other. So some people say that there's a lot of burning bridges between Poles and Jews, and I try to, build the bridges. We know what took place in history. We can't change it.
right.
So let's try to, move on from there and work towards being closer together than further apart. So, and subsequently, one of my drummers back in Sin in New York was Jewish, Basil Stanley. He's in Florida now, Stan Bissell. And I'm friends with a lot of Jewish people around the world, which is cool. And I got friends, a lot of from the W.A.S.P fans from around the world. There's some Jewish ones there and whatnot. So it's interesting how all the cultures come together under one roof with rock and roll. So that it's
And that's actually good, because earlier we were talking about how metal, and rock and roll, it's not just a music, it's a lifestyle, and it doesn't
It's
really matter
who
where
you are,
where you're from or what you're about. When you're in the mosh pit to a cool metal concert, everybody's there for the same reason. And everybody has that. It's, like I said, it's really a lifestyle.
and there's the most eclectic group of characters you will ever find there.
That's
Just
right. We accept everybody.
Just kind of like here at Kosher Metal. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, the term kosher, as we use it, to quote our website, has nothing to do with religious. You use it in slang form, which can mean either legitimate, permissible, or genuine and authentic.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on. We do appreciate it. We will go ahead and let you go, and we'll be in touch with you soon. And
Thank you very much. That's all I have to say. Rick Fox.
I thank you guys, and I salute you for what you're doing to help keep rock and metal alive.
Thank you, sir. And we will talk to you later.
All right. You take care and have a great one.
You too.
You too, man.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic.
There you have it. So I was trying to keep it around 25 minutes, but you know what? That was a good interview, so we ended up going a little bit long. But you know
A
what?
little over 30.
It happened.
It does, and what can we say but legendary piece of
The
rock and roll
legendary
history
Rick
right
Fox.
there. Rick Fox. R.I.K. Get that shit right.
That's right. Let's get into some metal right about now.
Yes, metal.